And I think one of the things that became more and more apparent to me was that a lot of people think in the term of black and white, which I think is a really big risk to any organization. If you get people who are too dogmatic about a certain thing, it's not healthy. This is the Rebel HR Podcast, the podcast where we talk to human resources innovators about innovation in the world of HR. If you're a people leader or you're looking for a new way to think about how to help others be successful, this is the podcast for you. Rebel on, HR Rebels. All right, Rebel HR listeners, this is our 50th recording that we have done. We just went over 1 year anniversary of doing the podcast. And this is the first time that Patrick, Molly, and myself are sitting in the same room doing the podcast. So cheers to you, my wonderful co-host.
Cheers. Well, mine's already open.
Yours can't open up. They're already waiting at me. Molly literally has 3 drinks in front of her right now. Must have had a rough day.
I wanted to come prepared.
You know, if there's anything we learned this last year, you can't really prepare for what we have in front of us in HR.
No, you can. Adapt and be nimble.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 year later. So we started this thing, we were talking about COVID, not knowing if there was going to be a vaccine. Then we had a vaccine. Now we're talking about going back to the office or not. So, yeah, wild times. Good times.
Good times, for sure. And Kyle, you've done a lot for this podcast. So kudos to you. You are the brains behind all of it. So this is really a cheers to you.
Well, thank you very much. For me, the best part of doing this podcast has just been meeting all the wonderful guests and getting to explore some of these topics that, you know, get so busy day to day. It's hard to remember, like, oh yeah, why are we here? We're here to help people. How do we do that? What are some things that are facing us in the future, and how do we address it? Those things are fun for me to explore, and you know, the guests on this podcast really help me do that. So appreciate both of you joining and helping support it, and it's been a good ride.
It's been fun. I was wondering, how are these going to go? Can't do the disrupt HR thing. Is it going to be like a lot of F-bombs? Is it going to be venting set? A lot of venting? Like, how is this going to go? But it's been cool. It's been fun.
It's been fun. I still remember that first one was super weird. You know, listening to your own voice.
Yep.
And then second of all, thinking like, yeah, what are we going to talk about? You know, what do we have to say? But man, there's a lot to say last year, and it's been a lot of fun.
There's always something to say. Can you guys imagine what this first HR conference is going to be like post-COVID?
Oh, man. Yes.
It's going to be a mess.
It's going to be a hot.
It's going to be like sending COVID out, shirts off, send off type of thing. Like, it's going to be
shirts off, send off.
I might skip that one.
What's that look like, Patrick, at an HR conference? Shirts off, send off.
A lot of beer, a lot of wine. Just, what happens here stays here.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of that.
Kudos to all the HR folks out there that have made it through this past year. And there's a lot of people that were able to kind of just sit back and ride it out, but not HR. We were right in the brunt of it. So cheers to everybody.
One thing that I wondered, I was talking about this with somebody recently, is all the clout, maybe it's you and I, Kyle, all the clout that HR has built over this last year. Are we going to, still ride that? Or what companies are going to revert back some HR departments back in the corner, right? It's just whatever you built up, don't lose it. Keep it going, keep the momentum going, and show your face, raise your hand. You've already shown you can do it once. The majority have. Be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the evolution sticks.
I think it will.
I think it will in some organizations. Yeah. With the right HR.
Yes. But I feel like there was already momentum, and then COVID just propelled that like instantly forward. And I would agree. I think the right HR people, the ones that are definitely listening to the show, are going to be the ones that will continue that. We're going to do some awesome things now that we're not just surviving, now that we can actually try to thrive.
It is going to be interesting when you guys are talking about the first HR conference. This week I'm going to my first event. Thursday I have a safety workshop in Milwaukee. And the RSVP list is bigger than any other year we usually have. Usually there's about 35, and I think we have like 60 or 70 coming. And that's remarkable for a safety workshop. For HR people. It's going to be really interesting to see how that goes.
And it's not required.
It's part of our captive program. We have a captive for our work comp experience. So there's about 24 or 25 businesses. But the leaders are coming, the safety people are coming, hell, the maintenance people are coming. Everybody's coming. It's going to be really interesting.
So how crazy is a safety conference?
They're about like HR conferences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, once 4:30 hits, cocktail hour starts, and the ones I've gone to in the past that have been in the Dells, we wrap everything up by about 9, 10 o'clock after dinner, and I usually, turn in. Everybody goes to the casino. And the next morning you come in, you can tell who went to the casino that day. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this goes.
Oh, for sure. I've actually looked into joining a couple of captives, and the off-site meetings usually are held in really cool places. I'm like, gosh, I should join just for this experience.
Yeah, they call it it has something to do with the money and domicile countries, and I don't understand the terminology. I know my leaders that are on the board can go to Bermuda or wherever.
Yep.
They've never asked me. Nice to go, but I get to go to Milwaukee, so that's all right.
Milwaukee. That's about Bermuda. It's the Bermuda of Wisconsin.
There's water.
There is water. There's water, and the water turns into beer, and, it's all good. Oh, yeah. This year's been one of those that I look back on, and I think, this year was a terrible year for a lot of people. And I think that, we still aren't out of it. And there's still there's still a lot of work that needs to be done and a lot of growth that needs to occur. And I hope that we can take away the learning that we've had this year, specific human resources, and continue that momentum forward. Patrick, you and I were having this conversation that, it's like they really needed HR at the beginning of the pandemic, right? Because, we are the subject matter experts in all things weird and like, well, what do I do? Who do I call? Well, I guess call HR. They'll figure it out. And so that was what we were lived for, right? But then once it became kind of normalized and, then HR tended to, in some cases, start to take a little bit of a back seat, or, leaders didn't necessarily have the same level of requirement for HR. So I'm hopeful that organizations have realized that this is not just, an HR only thing, and that we actually are, strategic business leaders outside of, crisis management and managing vaccinations through a pandemic.
Don't you think that's just as much, if not more, on the HR person rather than the organization to take that initiative to say, hey, I can do this. I am going to be strategic. Look what I did here. Let me solve some of these other problems.
I agree with that. Don't let yourself get wrapped back into like the stereotype of HR. You already proved what you can do, but yeah, now it's on you to keep doing it. It's not just because you did it once, that doesn't mean your doors flood with all your leaders every week. You still have to raise your hand. I hope with that, more have learned that, and we'll continue to do that in our profession.
No, I'm not naive to think like there's not organizations that don't think highly of HR, right? And that will fall back into that. But at the same time, I think if HR professionals step up and truly solve business problems, I would hope the business leaders would be open to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that sounds nice, but there are organizations where it won't be possible. And that's just, some organizations will struggle to understand that. And I think we'll ultimately struggle, especially in the environment we're going into now, which is we have a lot fewer people in the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
The retention and attraction and hiring of people is going to be the next big hurdle that we have to overcome. And if organizations aren't aware or supportive of their HR folks as strategic partners, I think they're going to struggle a lot. Or organizations who have people who do HR but don't have that as a full-time job, if that's not a full-time focus, they're also going to struggle. So I don't know. It's for me, it's kind of like the nature versus nurture argument, right? It's like, so does your company nurture you to be innovative and dynamic and strategic, or does your nature enable you to do that naturally? I don't know. I don't know if that's a clear answer. I think it's variable.
I think in your larger organizations, it's probably more the organization can get in the way. In your small to mid-size, I think individuals, leaders, HR has a lot more opportunity, and persistence pays off. Like for me, coming up in small to medium-sized business, there are so many opportunities. Like looking back, I'm like, if I would have just said something, or hey, that was my idea, but I didn't say anything, or I wasn't persistent about this, I could have made a difference, but I sat back.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. The big versus small company debate is an interesting one for me because I think there are really large organizations that are naturally innovative and naturally people focused, and then there are small companies that aren't. So I think it's really a product of culture. How much do you guys think HR actually impacts culture? Like truly builds culture?
To me, it depends on the organization. You said about people first. Is it an employee first organization, or is it an organization when you walk in the door, it's defined by operations, sales, production, profitability? That's where you kind of get that sense when you walk in the door. And we are stretched. Even before pandemic, no matter the size of the organization, HR departments are the ones that are really stretched. I think a rule of thumb in the world of the HR profession is one full-time HR body for every 100 employees. Well, we know that's not the case. I mean, let's be realistic about that. Really, in reality, it's like 1 to every 200, I feel like. So it really depends what that organization looks like and how they're going to want to move forward, because employees are going to want to go to the people first organizations. So now, when we're all struggling for talent, they are going to pretty much have their pick where they're going.
I think so. I've been in organizations where I have learned that persistence does pay off. I mean, all those culture initiatives, it's really just about a persistence issue, but also it's impacting the leaders and how they lead their teams and the culture they're creating with their teams. I think those are the two big things that can make a difference from a culture perspective, and the tone that you're setting with you as HR and with your leadership team. I think that's a big one, the tone.
And I love that. Are you sitting in an office watching culture happen, or are you doing something about it? Like, what are you doing with your own role and your own power?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as much as we want to impact culture, it's all about hiring the right people, hiring the right leaders, and letting them do what they're good at and empowering them to do that. As far as communication, I think a lot of that has a heavy impact, especially if you're talking like organization-wide communication. And then I think if you look at, from the things that HR can control, that's, I think, in that context a lot. So I like to think about, okay, what do I actually have control over? Do I have control over the behavior of my employees or leaders? No. Try as you will. You do not have control over them. The best you can do is give them the training and the tools, and then hope that they use them right. But I do think so if you control compensation levels, employee benefits, response to employee leaves of absence or bereavement situations or mental health concerns, those things. Every single one of those interactions is an opportunity to inform your culture, right? And build culture by being caring and supportive and empathetic and all the things that we say we want. And so I think you can build culture in that way. I don't think that if anybody has a goal to try to impact behavior, the ability to actually control what somebody does is very minimal. So, good luck with that.
I would agree with that. But I'd also push back a little bit. And I think clear communication, clear expectations can kind of help that. Like, for the most part, it drives me nuts when a leader comes to me and says, so-and-so just won't do it. I'm asking him to do it. He just won't do it. He sucks at his job. I hate that. There are going to be some people that it's just not a right fit, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, okay, what expectations have you set? Have you explained why you're asking them to do this? Like, have you explained the job responsibilities? Have you given them the tools to do it? And it all comes down to communication.
Sure. But what are you actually controlling in that situation? You're coaching the
leader,
right?
To how to be better, how to interact better, rather than just, I'm done with this guy, fire, let's get a new one in here. Because we all know that's not the case, right?
I'm dealing with that today. That was one thing I dealt with today. As you were pulling up, I said to Kyle, no shit. I like today I can write the book. Kyle said, which one? I said HR.
The book.
Change the job.
but the HR manual.
So, 30-year employee has his job duties shifted a little bit, changed for the better. But if about 8 months ago, but was officially given to him with expectations 4 weeks ago. Now we want to fire him. 30-year employee, and there's some other protected class type deals in there where he could come back to us. And I'm like, okay, you're frustrated. Have you had conversations? What have you talked about? Have you give him like weekly goals? No, I'm ready to move on. No, not going to happen. I don't feel like sitting in deposition. No, come back in 6 months.
And just, is it the right thing to do? Like, as a leader and as an HR person that's helping my leaders lead people, I want to sleep good at night. And I do that if I give that associate every opportunity to make it better. Mm-hmm. Then it's on them, not on me.
Yeah. And there are, there are the few that maybe just do need to go. But majority of the time, people just don't know the expectations.
Yeah, and I think you can set those expectations as much as you want, but you still don't have control, right? And so I struggle with HR people who try to like manhandle control of a situation and assume that their approach will get some sort of reaction or response. Ultimately, I do not believe that you can truly incentivize the behaviors you want without understanding that you have almost no control over them. So anyways, I don't know, maybe I'm cynical, but I've tried to modify behavior a lot. And I do think it's clear expectations. It's, setting communication, doing the right thing as it relates to that is the most important thing that you can do. But even that, you're really just controlling the communication that you're extending to a leader versus actually impacting the culture. Ultimately, the leader is the one doing all the work.
We need better leaders. I'm reflecting, and it's just, they're all good. They all have good traits, good qualities. But when it comes to doing that work, they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it.
Leaders can make or break an organization, a culture, a team. I agree.
And, they say they want to, but they need to trickle it downhill to the front line, to those managers and supervisors that are really there with the employees all day, every day. That's what I see a lot in organizations. You say you want to do it, but how do you communicate that moving downhill?
So I feel like an organizational trend has been to flatten out the hierarchy, right? Less levels. Have you guys seen that? What are you guys think that's a good strategy, a bad strategy? Apple just did it this last year, I think.
I don't know if you could label it good or bad. I think it could be good or it could be bad depending upon your organizational needs. But here's a couple risks I've seen with that, because I've seen both throughout my career. Number one, more levels means less span of control for leaders. And, if you look at, depending on which study you look at, but I like the one done by the military, they did a deep study on span of control and basically said any more than 16 people and you have lost your effectiveness. I can tell you, I've been in organizations with somebody with over 50 direct reports in a manufacturing facility. Let me tell you how much time and attention those 50 direct reports got from that individual. Do you know who got the time and attention? The problem performers, the people who were squeaky wheels making the noise, if so to speak. So I think that's the risk. I do think that their reduction of span of control also has a ton of positive components potentially. You are creating more open communication from senior levels of the organization to individuals kind of on the front line. I think there could be some cultural wins there. So I don't think it's as simple as good or bad. It's also cheaper for organizations, right? So, and I'm not surprised. I mean, when we just went through COVID and we've got organizations, scrounging for cash, it's not surprising that one of the places they look is middle management. I mean, that's kind of that is the typical pattern in, the American capitalist system. So. But yeah, I don't know. So I think I'm agnostic on whether it's good or bad.
I think the brunt of it falls to the people that do the work, which is really unfortunate because they don't get compensated any differently and they're losing attention from their managers and leaders. And what I see personally is now, okay, I'm reporting to now this higher level leader. I'm not comfortable bringing certain thoughts to them. I'm not comfortable sharing my ideas because they're this high up leader that's so many pay levels ahead of me. They don't care about my ideas. They've been there, done that, or they don't care about my personal situation for work-life balance. And that creates a big disconnect. And I guess that's my opinion on it.
And now, a word from our sponsors. When Molly, Patrick, and I tried to figure out how to start our own podcast, we didn't know where to start. Thankfully, we found Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout makes it super easy for us to upload our episodes, track our listeners, and get listed on all the major podcast networks. Today's a great day to start your own podcast. I know that you're one of our listeners, so you've definitely got something to say. Whether you're looking for a new marketing channel, have a message you want to share with the world, or just think it would be fun to have your own talk show, podcasting is an easy, inexpensive, and fun way to expand your reach online. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. Your show can be online and listed in all the major podcast directories within minutes of finishing your recording. Podcasting isn't that hard when you have the right partner, and the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. And now, for listeners of Rebel HR, you can get a $20 Amazon gift card sent to you from Buzzsprout by clicking in the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that is an area where I think HR can have an impact. So, I'll reflect back on that situation with the leader with 50 people. Could he be effective for all 50 people? Probably not. Was he an effective leader? Yes, very much so. And he was one of our most tenured leaders. So could he manage the complexity? Yes. Did it crash and burn? No. Was it optimal? No. Right? But then if you back up a little bit and you're thinking about this from the standpoint of organizational development and design, okay, great. If I have a new leader and I'm bringing them in and this is their first leadership job, am I going to give them 50 people? The answer should obviously be no, right? So I think that as you're having these questions in your head about, okay, how do I design something? You can't do it without also balancing the leadership capabilities on your team. And Patrick, I know what you were saying about leaders and I get it, but I am going to show a little bit of empathy for leaders. I have seen so many leaders who want to do the right thing and just struggle because they don't know how to manage their time effectively, or they were dealt a hand that really wasn't fair to them.
Well, both of you came from middle management, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right with that?
Right. Yep.
And I'm knee deep into it right now, so
right.
I can relate.
I mean,
it's hard.
Totally.
Yeah.
You are in the middle of all of it, and you're the one that has to deal with all of it because somebody said something or an employee needs something, and all you're looking for is support. And you don't have support. We have support at home, but not at work so much.
And excuse my language, but you have shit coming both ways.
Oh, yeah.
Molly just dropped the S word. Now my 9-year-old just knows what the S word is.
I tried to do it really quietly.
He already knew. I don't know where he would have heard that word. Certainly wasn't from Dad. I bet Mom was probably dropping some S-bombs. I guarantee it.
Like when the kids walked in the door, you both were probably just like, oh.
Never.
He says it was Bruno Mars, so it wasn't me.
Yes.
I didn't scar your child as Bruno Mars. Just let's put that on the record.
Leave it on the music.
We do love us some Bruno Mars. Uptown Funk. At one point, like 2 or 3 years ago, I don't even remember when it was, but at one point we were rocking to Uptown Funk like every night, dance parties, that was just our thing. And I'm not one of those guys that listens to the lyrics. I'm a music guy. I just like the melodies and harmonies and stuff. I'm not really listening to the words. And then I slow down and I listen to the words. I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't play this for my 6-year-old and 7-year-old kids.
There's a lot of songs like that. Once you start listening, oh my gosh.
So yeah, at an event, this is way off topic where we went, but that's okay. At an event I was at, CeeLo Green was playing, family event. He didn't play the edited version of the FU song. It was unedited, and the newspapers ripped him to shreds. It was in my hometown.
Where was that? Because I remember hearing about that.
It was, I'm going to say it. It was in Sioux City.
Okay.
It was at Saturday in the Park, which is a wonderful event. I love that event. One of my favorites. And, Sioux City, Iowa, great place. But yeah, it was a few years back, and it was not taken well. Oh, CeeLo. CeeLo's not welcome back.
Yeah, I know that one. Anyways, what were we talking about? Span of control. Yeah. Rein it in. We're chasing squirrels today. But guy, okay, we're on our second beer. This is the first time we've done a podcast in person. It's our 50th episode. So, forget it. Shout out to my CEO. I started this podcast and I reached out to him. I'm like, listen, man, I think I want to do this. But if you tell me no, I won't. Right? Like, this is something that I would like to do. He's like, yeah, go ahead. He's like, just don't say anything crazy. So, if you would like to, provide feedback on whether or not Kyle has said anything crazy over the last year, feel free. We love your email.
I was just going to ask, how's that working out for you? You haven't gotten in trouble yet, so.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I don't know.
Maybe he doesn't listen.
Probably not.
That was going to be my question. Listen to them.
My wife doesn't listen, and I get it. Her rationale is, listen, all I deal with is HR crap at work because she's a leader of people. I don't want to listen to more HR crap.
And I have to listen to you every single day. That's good for me.
Molly, what are you insinuating with that statement?
Nothing. That's what my husband would say. Nope, I'm good.
Oh, you're right. That's what my wife says. I have to hear babble every night. No, I don't need to listen to your podcast.
Oh, Patrick's wife, Amanda, I just want to apologize, and kind of pay it forward with the apologies. Because every time Patrick and I get together and the kids are playing and stuff, we inevitably just start talking about HR. It's just what we do. Just HR, hashtag HR nerds, whatever. Sorry, all spouses of HR people everywhere.
You need somebody to talk to about it.
Well, a lot of times, you guys can relate to this. We can't even go to our own people at work because we have to hide that from our own people at work. So it's like, who can we go to vent at work? We go to our HR peers. But this last year, we haven't been able to do that and vent and, get it off our chest.
So I'm going to call that out right now. So you use the word hide. And I think one of the things that has been made readily apparent over the last year is that HR has a tendency to hide. And last year we couldn't hide. We couldn't sit in our office. We couldn't do nothing. We had to be on the leadership calls. We had to be coaching the exec team on what to do. We had to be figuring out what the hell Dr. Fauci's saying and what's the CDC saying and what's your state saying and why is the governor disagreeing and blah, blah, blah. And we are called upon to be visible and not hidden. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier in this podcast. I hope that we don't hide anymore. And I think that there's a difference between being hidden and being appropriately confidential with things, right? So I guess I'm grasping onto that one word you use, Patrick, but I hate the word hide because not only does it indicate that, we should be ashamed of something that we're doing, it also indicates that we're being, kind of untruthful or have a lack of integrity and we have to keep things hidden, and I think that's such an interesting equation to get our heads around in HR is it's like, okay, how transparent are you? How much do you share? And how much do you actually share with people at work?
So scenario, I'm curious for you guys' perspective. You have somebody on your team that is smaller team, but discharged for theft. There's rumors going around, right? Of course there are. What would you do?
I just want to make sure I understand. So you fired someone because they stole from you or from somewhere else?
So let's say they stole from the company and another coworker.
Okay.
So coworker was impacted. Obviously, it rumbled culture. They want to know, and or two scenarios. So one situation they got fired. The other one maybe they didn't get fired, but they definitely got disciplined because you couldn't prove it or whatever the case. Like, just how would you? Because people want to know, did you address this? This is a big deal. What happened? What are your thoughts?
Okay. So I don't know about thoughts, but, if someone were to ask me, so, going back to kind of the comment that I was making about being, transparent, if someone were to ask me what happened, my honest response would be, listen, I can't share that information with you. I understand there might be rumors swirling, but I really can't share that information with you. It would not be appropriate. Right. I mean, that would be my comment. And, I would just kind of have to let the rumors swirl. Right. Patrick, what do you respond?
I don't think you can stop the rumors. I mean, you got to keep it confidential, but, you can reassure them all you want, but people's beliefs are going to be their beliefs. That's all you can do is
cheers to that.
Keep it positive, keep it upbeat, and just say it's handled. and we're going to move forward. We're going to do our best to make sure this doesn't happen to any of you. Maybe here's some measures we're putting in place to ensure that it's not going to happen again. But if it does, it will be dealt with appropriately, and we move on.
Yeah, one thing I found about specifically in middle management and HR in general, like in the absence of information, people will make things up, and it's always the worst case scenario. It's never the best. People can never assume the best. It's always the worst case scenario. So I often find myself like trying to balance transparency and, okay, you got to find that boundary, right?
No, I think, what's so funny to me, I actually kind of love this. I don't know, this is my sick humor, but I think that it is hilarious that when you come out with a policy or you communicate a change or, have some sort of an organizational adjustment that's made, people assume that there is like a bunch of people in a dark room coming up with this sinister strategy. And the reason you're doing this is so that you can, in 3 years from now, make this next change that just screws us over. That's why you did this. I know that for a fact. That's why you. And what's so hilarious to me is I'm sitting here like, man, I don't know what's going to happen in 3 years. Are you freaking kidding me? We're just trying to do the best we can with the information we got. I wish I knew. I wish I knew the program that would impact something. We could modify a program in 5 years. So, you know what? Sometimes you just get lucky and sometimes you get unlucky on some of this stuff. I'm sorry.
But what about the response from employees? The immediate response. Oh, what sparked that? Who did something wrong? Why are we having to
I love that one.
Annual dress code reminder. Okay. Oh, somebody wore their flip-flops today. Naughty.
Get her.
Oh, yeah. And then you get a text message on Saturday, so-and-so's out of dress code. Or one of my favorites lately is I'll get a picture of somebody's shoes sent to me. Are these acceptable? Okay, people.
Didn't we learn anything last year?
Nope.
Who gives a shit?
Nope. We didn't learn anything.
That's the third S-bomb on this show.
Patrick, you are in rare form. You are in rare form. You know what? I need to review our standards of business conduct, and we're going to see if 4 S words is over the limit. Oh, God. It's so funny. It's a dress code. That's one of those things. It is just ridiculous to me.
Oh, I hate it
that we have to
so
tell
much.
an adult how to dress.
Sarah Noel Wilson tweeted, "What is the one thing coming out of the pandemic you want to see go away?" I tweeted back, dress codes.
I don't care. I think dress codes have their place. I think if your organization wants everybody to be on a team and the symbol for them is wearing a specific logo on your clothing or something like that, okay, cool, whatever, right? But yeah, when we all worked at home and God knows how many people were even wearing pants, right? Like, I mean, I don't want to know. Don't put the camera any lower than your shoulders. Let's just leave it there. I'm good with that, right?
There were I know a couple teachers that did this, but also some leaders that asked them to stand up to ensure that they were fully clothed. I'm like, that is a brave decision. You're insane.
No, that's Big Brother.
Don't do that. Nobody wants to. Nope, I'm good.
I think Kyle mentioned there was one, I think it was on one of the podcasts. We were talking about dress codes a few podcasts back, and somebody in his business asked him, "What's our dress code on this?" And he handed them a piece of paper on their letterhead that just said, "Dress appropriately." I like that story.
That's me.
Yeah.
We are all grown ass.
I referenced that. You said that on a
adults. Nice. We can handle this.
Absolutely.
Hi, Jude. Hey, Kyle's kid's here.
Yeah. So this is what we get when we record at home. Anyways, he does look annoyed. We are infringing upon his YouTube time, and he has to keep his YouTube lower now. So sorry about that. But
sorry, Jude.
Does he have time limits?
Mm-mm.
Screen time? Oh, I did that to my kid, and it's like I put her in a prison.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Well, how dare you?
3 hours a day? That's a lot. That's very generous. In the summer, it's a lot.
Well, Patrick, what do you allow? Like 10
hour
minutes?
Hour and a half.
Whoa, such a hard ass.
Yeah,
Hey, Jude, it could be worse.
It could be a lot worse.
Oh, yeah, no. Workbooks, reading, before any screen time.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah. This last year, I think it was one of those situations where we had our moment to make an impact in an organization. And I want to just extend some gratitude to all the HR practitioners out there and listeners that have been with us for the last year. It's been a tough year. And our goal with this podcast and with the guests and some of the conversations we're sharing is to help educate as well as raise up, HR practitioners that want to make a change, want to make difference, do things a little bit differently. And hopefully our conversations have been a help to each and every one of you. That is our primary goal. And, the community that we built around the show and the support and the wonderful guests that we've had, it's just been absolutely wonderful. So, just want to extend my thanks to everybody listening out there and to Patrick and Molly here sitting next to me. It's been an interesting year, and hopefully we can all shift to thriving in the near future.
Yeah, I agree. But with that, it's also been a year of we're not all perfect, and I think we all need to extend each other and ourselves some grace. So I'm curious, what was your guys' biggest failure over this last year?
Oh, here's Molly with the real questions.
No, I really want to know. It's been a crap year, and not all of us in HR did everything right. I know I didn't. At some point, you have to learn to laugh about the mistakes that we've made, especially within the last year, and let it go and move forward.
Molly would ask that question.
It's a damn good question, Ty.
It is a damn good question. But it reminds me a little bit of the question, what's your biggest mistake? What's your biggest weakness? It's I'm too big of a perfectionist.
Oh.
I'm too on time all the time. I care too much, all these BS questions that you get, anyway. Biggest mistake. I think for me, that's an easy one as I reflect, and I struggle with, I'm a struggler of imposter syndrome at times. And I think that, for me, as I reflect on last year, my biggest mistake was assuming that I communicated something appropriately, or I didn't truly seek to understand if the message landed correctly. A great example of that would be early in the pandemic, rolling out, COVID protocols and setting out those expectations and what we thought was clear, reviewed by an attorney, of course, and, all these protocols. And we roll it out and then did not circle back and then seek to understand the interpretation of the policy. And for me, it was a really clear example that you've got to check for understanding. You've got to assume that somebody does not understand something, especially when you're communicating something on a broad scale. So that was a mistake for me. And I think I don't know if this was a mistake, but this is a call out and this is a credit to my team. I think I assumed that my team needed me more than they did, but they absolutely did a wonderful job managing in cases where I wasn't immediately available and making some of the right decisions in a really, really tough environment. And so I think one of the mistakes that I would say I made was I didn't give my team enough credit. And it was really, really powerful to see them make really, really good and tough decisions in a really quick time frame to protect the team and to help the team out. So, a couple of mistakes I'd call out. Patrick, hopefully I gave you enough time to think of something.
Is that what you were doing there?
I was trying to help you out. I was throwing you a bone. You're 2 beers deep. I'm trying to keep you going, man.
You have 2, so I have to come up with 3. So you're on the clock, Molly. You have 4.
Yeah, because we're going to turn the tables.
I'm just too perfect, guys. Just kidding.
I would love that. I don't know. I haven't, I guess, really had time to reflect on things like that just because you think you're always doing the best you can do.
You think you're always right. That's what you were going to say. You can just say it.
Think or no?
There it is. Again, Amanda, I'm really sorry. I'm just going to extend condolences.
I'm going to make her listen to this, by the way. I'm giving you a lot of time, Molly, to think about it. No, I'll give you 2. I'll give you 2 that I guess I haven't really reflected on, but now I think about it. We were forced to react so quickly. I think a lot of times I reacted too quickly. I dealt with a lot of situations. My team, my HR manager, we had a log that I think is 20-some pages of every situation that came through our door. There were times we did just react too quickly before really just giving it some time because I felt like we were just in reaction mode. Can't talk about every scenario, but I would say there was a few of them that, okay, we should have thought through that one a little better. Probably the other one was I left my previous industry and job to come to HR for a reason, so I could have some work-life balance, which doesn't always happen in HR.
That is a laughable comment.
This year alone, almost every second of the day I was putting work.
Okay, we're going to back that one up. We're going to back it up. What mentor in what world told you that HR was a great place for work-life balance?
Yeah, I've never heard that.
It was my own thoughts. It was just the guy on this
Oh,
one.
okay. The guy who's always right. Okay.
I left in a shitty industry.
Okay. Man, the clock is at 5. If you're keeping score at home and you're playing a drinking game for every time Patrick says shit, you're at 6. 7 maybe? I don't know. I lost track.
No, but I'd say, especially this year, we all just put work in front of everything else. And we didn't take time for ourselves. And we didn't force ourselves to do that. So I would say that would probably be one of my biggest mistakes.
Yeah, mine was along similar lines of assuming. I assumed people were keeping up with what was going on. So I assumed they knew why we were making the decisions that we made. And if this year taught me anything, it was that I need to slow down. I need to stop assuming people know things and just be very clear in my communication and why we are making these decisions. You know, I feel like I did a good job, like, over communicating that, hey, our organization was okay. Like, everybody was going to have jobs. It was going to be okay. But when we went into the fine detail, it was rough. I also made a couple like payroll mistakes. You know, our payroll in person reports to me and with the FFCRA. I assumed she knew a lot more than she did. Had a little mistake with her 401k.
We could have a whole pod.
We're going to push that out of scope.
I never want to think about that ever again. Ever.
You know, all you had to do.
You and I use the same payroll vendor, and what they did, and then they switched the script on us 2 weeks in was.
So for that payroll vendor, if you'd like to sponsor the show, you know, we won't name your name.
They called me today asking if I'd give another potential client a reference, and I didn't call them back.
Yeah, I've had that conversation.
But we don't want to change payrolls because it's too painful.
Yes.
It's painful.
Yeah.
No, I feel your pain. I agree.
Yes, a couple like technical things I should have or tried to better understand, but nobody knew at the time. And then I didn't think to follow up. And, you know, they'd roll out things and then they would have there would be so much that was still left to be figured out. So we were all just in a million different directions. So the only reason I brought that up is we all made mistakes this past year. We all did the best we could. We all killed it, but we also have to give ourselves some grace for what we didn't do and reflect on what we learned. Because it was a lot.
100%. 100%. Yeah, you know, I think, you know, if I just reflect on, you know, lessons learned or, you know, personal growth, I think for me it was just expanding horizons, you know, being more open to feedback, being more empathetic with people who have maybe more fear or have different circumstances than myself.
Different opinions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I tend to struggle with at times is, you know, I like to hold differing opinions in my head. I like to be kind of moderate in that, where I like to hear, you know, some of these diverse things and then try to reconcile that in my own, in my own thoughts. And I think that's one of the things I really like about my job is the fact that I get to do that on a regular basis, right? There's never a black and white X plus Y equals Z. It's always, you know, there's always a hyperbolic curve and a derivative of X, and there's a, you know, standard deviation in there somewhere, and all the stuff that I didn't do well in calculus with. But I do think that one of the biggest challenges that we face, and I think one of the things that became more and more apparent to me, was that a lot of people think in the term of black and white, which I think is a really big risk to any organization. If you get people who are too dogmatic about a certain thing, it's not healthy, right? And so, you know, I think about, you know, whether it's masks or vaccines or Fauci or Trump or Biden, you know, there was so much like just natural conflict from outside of the workplace that filtered in. And, you know, trying to navigate that, for me, it's kind of it's kind of interesting and intriguing. Like I find it an interesting challenge, but it's really stressful. And for somebody like myself who tends to internalize other people's emotions, it can be very, very draining. So how did you guys deal with, kind of that conflict that was ever present all year?
Very exhausting. Tensions were high all the time.
Yes. Anxiety and tension. It was, those are the two best words I could say about pretty much walking in the door every day and opening your laptop at 11 o'clock at night. It's what's now?
What's next?
What's next?
Yeah, I tried to kind of go back to my apparently concept of the show, but give people grace. And then I made it very clear of what I expected from my team was the exact same. You have to give grace. You can disagree and we will disagree, but we're going to do it respectfully. Anything else I will not tolerate. Talking about my biggest mistake was being unclear. I made sure damn well I was very clear on that topic.
Uh-oh, Molly dropped a D word.
I was,
There's
we weren't going to be dealing with any of that. We are going to be respectful, and part of that is when we talk about diversity and inclusion, that's not just skin color. It's not just sex. That is differing of opinions. So that was kind of how I laid that groundwork.
Patrick?
I already answered.
That wasn't an answer.
That wasn't an answer?
No. Come on, man. Give us some more. Give us some Patrickisms.
I'm not swear anymore.
Come on. We got listeners with drink in hand waiting for another S word.
What I talk about a takeaway is people really show their true colors. And that was interesting to me. Just you thought you knew somebody, but then they're just completely not the person you thought they were. The ones that were more hypersensitive than you would ever expect them to be. People that were close to me that were that way, that I was like, okay, no, that's all cool. Everybody had their own opinions. You got to respect that, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, we were making decisions for the business to keep the business operational. That's where my mind was 24/7. As much as I tried to show empathy, I don't do it as well as you do, Kyle, or probably you, Molly, but every decision I made was all about the business operation.
Patrick, you wear your heart on your sleeve. What are you talking about?
They can't see that. We're on a podcast.
See, that was probably... I had a hard time balancing that, okay, the business and the people, but you can do both. And part of that is communication. You guys, I need to make sure, especially we were a smaller business, I need to make sure that you have a job to return to, and even if you communicate it or frame it like that, it's very helpful.
Yeah, it was tough.
It was tough. That balance between, it was so tough.
You can't just... Where I struggled with that one was we did everything we could, even sacrifice profitability to keep people employed. We didn't do the layoffs or anything like that. But it's so hard to try and convey that without disclosing confidential information. We have a list of 20 things we can do. Layoff was the last thing. It's but you can't... We have levers we can pull, but you can't tell them which ones. It's just be happy you're painting the wall today and you're doing something that adds value to the business. It was hard to try to explain why they were doing that because our business did decline. Healthcare closed. I'm in a healthcare organization. I service healthcare. Well, when the doctor's office is all closed, well, shit, we're not producing.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, and I think you just hit on one of the toughest part of being HR is, do you support the business or do you support the people? And I think that you have to be able to do both. And again, for me, it goes back to that equation, right? There's no black and white. I'm not here to work for the business. I'm not here to be only an advocate for the people. I'm here to try to find the common ground, right? To be that moderator in the middle, asking the right questions to the right people at the right time to try to derive the best solution given what we know right now. Right. And that for me, that's the secret sauce. Those are the HR people that really make a difference and can drive the change that we all need. And they have the ability to do that. And that doesn't mean that person is a CHRO or VP of whatever. That could be an entry-level HR associate who just asks the right question of their leader to make sure that leader makes a better decision tomorrow.
Right? Oh yeah, my HR associate, and payroll associate, she makes probably the biggest impact in our organization just by going above and beyond to show people appreciation. But then just to add to that, one thing I learned this year is I love the strategy portion, right? I love that. I put so much energy into strategizing, let's make this decision. I did not put enough energy into the executing piece and the communication piece and the rollout. And I think if you do that effectively, you can make most any business decision sound like it's also going to impact your people well. You know what I mean? If you do it effectively, it can be that balance of both. That's one of my lessons learned.
Yeah. Everybody screwed something up last year. I mean, I'm sorry. Nobody handled it perfectly at all. And, I think that's a great message for anybody listening. Give yourself some grace. We all did our best. We all made screw ups. And, I think that we can all, kind of walk away from this year with a couple of things in mind. First of all, thank God it's over.
What is it?
Well, last year's over. 2020 is over. Technically, yeah, there's no argument there. I'm just glad 2020 is over. Now, is COVID over? Okay, that's another question. So before you try to Jedi mind trick me, Patrick, and then say that's bullshit and whatever. Oh, now I said an S word. Drink. All right. Molly.
Cheers.
Cheers. I don't know. I think that last year was hard. Many of us are here. Unfortunately, many of us are not. And, at the end of the day, it is really about people. It's about taking care of others and, trying to balance employees and companies' solvency and trying to find a common ground in the middle. So a lot of us have moved mountains. A lot of us have mountains still to move. So, we're all in this together.
True that.
Yep. Still digging out of the hole. But we're getting there.
You can do your flash round.
You want to do the flash round?
Let's all do a flash round.
We'll do a flash round. All right. Okay. Rebel HR flash round. So 3 questions, real quick, quick fire we'll do 3 of them. So this will be different. Okay. Molly, ready for your flash round? Here we go. Question number 1. What is your favorite people book?
People book? Right now I'm reading Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead. I'm learning a lot that you guys can't relate to.
I love it.
Fair. Okay, question number 2. Who should we be listening to?
Okay, so I just started listening to the podcast Life is Short with Justin Long. So far, I've been pretty happy with that.
Justin Long, he is an actor of our time.
Yeah.
And perhaps, his greatest work was Accepted, where the university was SHIT. Shit. Drink one more.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, that brought it full circle.
I like that, guys.
I'm enjoying that. That was
good. Last question. How can our listeners connect with you?
LinkedIn is the easiest. Molly Burdess.
Molly Burdess. All right. Perfect. We'll have the information in the show notes, of course. All right, Patrick, you ready?
Sure.
Coming at you hot. Here we go. What is your favorite people book?
I always revert back to The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. Love that guy. Love his stuff.
I've never read that book. It's on my nightstand. I haven't read it.
I make all of my supervisors and managers read it. Anybody that's involved in hiring, you're going to read that book.
Sure.
If you work in my organization. Love it.
All right. Like it. All right. Question number 2. Who should we be listening to?
I'm going to steal a few that I've heard in other podcasts, but I'd say them anyway. Number 1, this podcast. Number 2, your employees. Number 3, U2.
U2 the band?
U2 the band.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, I got it.
Listen to Molly, not Kyle.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Oh my God, I have a story. You guys were ready for an embarrassing story? So on YouTube, so I was at a volunteer event a number of years ago called Chicago Cares. If anybody in Chicago is listening, I'm sure you're fully aware. Great event. Went and cleaned up a house and helped clean up a daycare, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. And I'm sitting there with my HR business partner, who's like this group leader. He's like a big deal. He's like Mr. Bigwig at corporate talent acquisition for Target Corp now. and Beautiful Day comes on by U2, and I'm like, oh man, I love U2. And he looks at me and he's like, what the hell did you just say? I'm like, U2 the band, U2 the band. So I still seared in my memory. I'm like, I just told this guy that I love him, like, weirdly, but he's a great guy. I mean, I love him as a mentor, but not in any other way. All right, so are you guys asking me or am I asking me?
Well, I don't know the
I'm gonna ask
question.
you.
Okay.
Wait, you have?
You guys
No, I
really
don't
know
have the
questions?
question.
Yeah, that's fair. I ask him.
I'll ask the
Okay, Patrick's asking. All right.
Kyle. What is your favorite people book or favorite book you've read recently?
Ooh, favorite book. Well, I'm a very boring individual. One of the favorite books that I've read recently is Richer, Wiser, Happier. It goes into essentially the biography of investors. And the context that I read that book in is how do they approach the world and how do they manage things like risk and reward and so on. But one of my favorite people books actually was the Alexander Hamilton biography that the play is based on. So I'm a kind of a musical nerd. So we got big into Hamilton, and I could probably recite most of them. I will not do that for our listeners. I will spare you all. And plus we don't have the trademark for the music, and I don't want to pay royalties. But the book itself is really, really interesting study of somebody who came from absolutely nothing, built themselves up into something of a completely above their standing, and then it completely came crashing down because of their ego. And so it's a really interesting case study for me, like human behavior and the power of the will and the power of the will to sabotage you as well.
Going back to your first book, I think I love that you're reading something different that's not a people book or HR related.
You guys want
to?
Yeah.
To get really in the heads of business leaders, for those people on this call that are HR people, read other books, learn what they're thinking. If you want to learn what your sales managers are thinking or your sales reps are thinking, read Jeb Blunt, Fanatical Prospecting. Take some time for yourself, invest in yourself, read those types of books so you can really understand the business side.
Or if you're hiring those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What makes them tick?
Yes.
Read those books.
Yeah, you got to speak the language. But some of my favorite books that I read this last year, all I do is read self-help books. I'm like a total nerd like that. I don't like novels. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. I used to read Star Wars when I was a kid, but I don't read that anymore. Again, nerd. So, but a lot of the books I've been like really studying have been investing, because when I started this year and then we hit kind of the business continuity issues and the risk to the business and what do we need to do in the business for business survivability, I realized I need to build up more financial acumen. I need to understand that language. I need to be able to speak that language. And in order to be an effective HR practitioner, that language needs to become second nature. So I read almost every finance and investment book I could get my hands on so I could speak that language.
It's really interesting you said that, because I have had like a significant number of people that have left our organization this past year to do individual investing, like personal investing.
Really?
It's been crazy. I've never seen anything like it. It's been a good year for them.
It's been good. Get educated, because it's not going to be this good forever. It doesn't always go up.
All right, Kyle, who should we be listening to?
Who should we be listening to? That's a really tough question for me. I think that you have to listen to your inner voice and the people that love you the most. And if you do those two things, everything else you do in life, hopefully, will be all right.
That's deep. I agree with the inner voice, though.
It's good. All right, where can we find you?
All over the place. www.rebelhumanresources.com, www.kyleroed.com, KYLEROED.com, LinkedIn. It's just a weird spelling. Just remember it's ROED, Roed, not Road. So, yeah, happy to connect. And, I think one of the things that I will say is that probably my favorite thing of this entire podcast is the community that we've built around it and the number of connections that I've made this year simply because of the podcast that I never would have made before. It's been a wonderful journey. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Patrick and Molly. It's been a great ride. Can't wait to do another 50.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle. You got to keep this going.
Rebel on. All right, that does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.